Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I have two replays for you in the tier 10 Italian auto-reloading medium tank, the Progetto 65, and today's video is all about why I think this is the best auto-reloading tank in the game, and especially the best tier 10 Italian auto-reloading tank. So we're going to have a quick look at the stats of the Progetto 65. I'm not going to go into too much depth with the Progetto 65 and the stats. I've got the stats up here so you can pause and take a look if you wish. We're going to be comparing to the Centauro 45T, which is the premium tier 10 Italian auto-reloading medium tank with an inverse auto-reloader, which works the opposite way that normal auto-reloaders work. And over here on the right, comparing it to the Redshire, which is the tier 10 Italian auto-reloading heavy tank. I'll then talk you through my command and equipment setup, what's changed with the Progetto 65 once you apply my command and equipment setup, and then we're going to get stuck into the two gameplays. They are time-stamped, and if you wish just to skip forward to the gameplays, that is absolutely fine by me. So we're going to have a sort of quick run through of the stats here and why I think this is the best auto-reloading tank, and what I think is great about the Progetto 65 and why it doesn't get the love it deserves from Wargaming but also by the community, and then we're going to get stuck into the gameplay. So first off, 1900 hit points, somewhere in the middle, pretty normal for a tier 10 medium tank, and it's only 100 off of the Redshire, which has pretty poor 2000 hit points for a tier 10 heavy tank. So yeah, it's a pretty good plus point there for the Progetto 65. Next two stats are great. You have the best view range, or the joint best view range, with the Centauro at 400 meters, and you have the best still concealment rating at 338.35 meters. With your equipment and commander setup, that allows you to get your spotting distance up to a very substantial level and your concealment rating down just enough so you're able to outspot quite a lot of your opponents, especially larger, medium and heavy tanks, and even some tank destroyers and light tanks that have poor crews. So that's definitely a plus point in my books for the Progetto 65. Next, in terms of the mobility, although you have the sort of middle of the road engine power at 750, you have to bear in mind the Centauro and the Redshire have thicker armoured plates. It weighs them down and they are a lot slower than Progetto. So the Progetto 65 comes out on top in terms of all of the other mobility aspects. You have a 18.75 power to weight ratio, great top speed at 65 kilometers an hour comparable to a Leopard 1, and a great top reverse speed of 23 kilometers an hour, the same as the Centauro 45T, much better than a Redshire. You have a 54 degrees a second hold traverse, which means you're very nimble when you get up to your top speed and you move like a light tank in that regard. And with your 50mm of upper hull armour, which is 10mm more than the PC version of this tank gets, you can ricochet shells from lower caliber guns if they're firing APCR, so that's definitely a plus point there. And in terms of your turret traverse, you already have the best in class 36 degrees a second on your turret, but with your gun handling skills that boosts up to a very nice level indeed. So mobility, a massive plus for this tank. It allows you to get into position, use your superior view range and concealment rating, and outspot your opponents and get some nice assistance damage. Next, we're going to look at the guns of all of these tanks. The Progetto 65 has a 105mm gun, unfortunately with a poor alpha damage for the gun caliber at 360 on your standard APDS and premium heat, and 440 alpha damage on your HESH rounds. In terms of the Centauro, you have a 120mm caliber gun with 400 alpha damage and 515 on the HE, and a 127mm caliber gun on the Redshire with 490 alpha damage on your standard and premium rounds and 640 with the HE. So apart from the poor alpha damage on all of the rounds in terms of the Progetto 65, you have 1440 damage in your magazine, which if you used it like an autoloader, you could get out in 7.5 seconds, which is the quickest out of all of these tanks, meaning you're not hanging around for too long. And that's because you have a 2.5 second intra-click reload, which is the best in this comparison. The best possible damage out of all of these tanks in terms of an auto-loading capacity, 1600 damage on the Centauro, but that's the longest time at 12 seconds, and the Redshire only has 30 more damage in 0.5 more seconds because it's only a 3-shot auto reloader. And one thing to note is the Centauro 45T is an inverse auto reloader, meaning it works the opposite way to the Progetto 65, so just to reiterate that fact. But why do I think this gun is so good even though the alpha damage is so poor? Well, you're going to come on in a minute to the DPM, which is horrific as well. But you have fantastic shell velocity on your standard APDS rounds at 1468 meters a second, meaning you can snipe extremely well, not having to give too much lead. You are going to lose penetration over distance, but you have the joint best in class penetration at 268 millimeters of penetration, same as a Rinoceronte, meaning you are more consistent with your shells. You also have heat rounds as a premium ammunition option, which is the same as a Rinoceronte, and this is far superior in my opinion to the Centauro's APCR rounds that, although have better shell velocity, they don't have the same penetration and they don't retain penetration over distance like heat rounds do. And 1173 meters a second shell velocity isn't too bad for heat rounds. You can get used to that at long ranges, and at mid ranges it isn't too bad at all. And you have that lovely 313 millimeters of penetration, which can contest super heavy tanks. Lastly, in terms of the HE, you're going to be some kind of nutcase to use HE or HESH on an auto reloader because of the horrific DPM, but if you know you're going to be coming up against a lightly armoured tank like a tank destroyer, light tank, or an SPG, then definitely you can make use of the 105 millimeters of penetration. Not quite as good as the 127 millimeters on the Rinoceronte's HE rounds, but it is better than the Centauro 45T's HE rounds. And yeah, overall, I think this is probably the best gun, just the fact that you have the best penetration on both of the premium and on the standard, and great shell velocity. You have low alpha damage, and we're going to come on now to low DPM, but you also have great gun handling. So how good is this gun handling? Well, you have a 2.1 second aim time, which is the best in this comparison by some way, and you also have the best accuracy by some way at 0.33, and you can get those down to fantastic levels to be a very nice sniper. And in conjunction with the great shell velocity and penetration, this gun feels more efficient, more consistent, even though you have this horrific DPM. So here, the best possible DPM on all of the tanks. The highest is the Rinoceronte, lowest is the Progetto 65 at 1661. So for a tier 10 medium tank, horrific. It does need a little bit of a buff in my opinion, but I still can get quite a bit of damage out of this tank, and enough to have some pretty decent games. And here is the worst DPM on all of these tanks. So in the case of the Progetto 65 and the Rinoceronte, the worst DPM is if you were firing the first shell loaded over and over again, and you just have to flip that for the Centauro, as the first shell is the best DPM. So the further you go into the magazine with the Centauro, you get that better DPM. That's why it's an inverse auto reloader, and it just, it feels a little bit weird, and you might as well go for the single fire gun on that tank. So how are the reloads for the shells on the Progetto 65? Well, as a 4-shot auto reloader, your first shell takes 19 seconds, your second shell 17 seconds, third shell 15 seconds, and your fourth shell 13 seconds. In terms of ammo capacity, 60, the same as the Centauro, better than the Rinoceronte, so a big plus point there. And unfortunately, you don't have the best gun depression, but it's still pretty nice at 9 degrees and very flexible, only 1 degree off of the Rinoceronte. Lastly, gun elevation, 20 degrees, best in this comparison, meaning you don't get caught out on slopes as much as the other two tanks. And you have that best in class intra-clip reload, meaning you don't have to sit out in front of opponents for too long, like you do with the other tanks, and take damage. While their armor is a little bit better, it's by no means fantastic. So what equipment and commander setup do I run with the Progetto 65? Well, in terms of my equipment, I run the advanced optics, the advanced loader, and improved ventilation. And with my commander, I run 6th Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Situational Awareness, and Camouflage Expertise. And in terms of my consumables, I run Large Med, Large Repair Kit, and Combat Rations. So in terms of the consumables, Combat Rations, to give the DPM gun handling view range that active and passive boost. In terms of my equipment setup, I run the advanced optics to boost my view range up to be able to spot for myself and outspot my opponents. Advanced loader because the DPM is horrific and I want to get it up as good as possible. And improved ventilation helps everything about the vehicle from the DPM, gun handling to the view range. In terms of my commander skills, all of the gun handling skills I run because I want to get this gun as consistent and as efficient as possible. Because that DPM is so poor, I want to make sure that when I fire, I am penetrating my shells. Situational awareness to boost my view range up, and camouflage expertise just to give my camo that little bit of a boost. Rapid loading speaks for itself to help the DPM, and Sixth Sense and Born Leader as standard on all of my commanders. So how does that affect the stats of the Progetto 65? Well, I've now got a 523 meters view range, and I use that in conjunction with a steel concealment rating of 313 meters to outspot quite a lot of opponents, and you find you get a lot of assistance damage and a lot of spotting damage with this tank if you use a similar setup because of that great base view range. In terms of mobility, the only thing that's changed is the turret traverse has gone up to 44.85 degrees a second, thanks to the gun handling skills that have improved that, so that's a big plus point. Lastly, in terms of the gun handling and DPM, aim time's gone down to 1.9 seconds and my accuracy down to 0.26, so making it a fantastic sniper. In terms of my DPMs, the best DPM possible I can get now is 2,337, and the worst, if I fired that first shell over and over again, 1,598 DPM. Here are the reloads of all of the shells now with my setup, so 13.5 seconds for the first shell, 12.09 seconds for the second, 10.67 seconds for the third, and 9.24 seconds for the fourth. It's lower alpha damage, but you do get your rounds out quicker and you feel like you've always got a round compared to the other two auto-reloaders, which is why I like this tank. And here are the DPMs of all of those rounds. So the first round 1,598, second 1,786, third 2,024, and the best DPM 2,337, which is horrific, but it just feels more efficient. The mobility, concealment, and the view range, combined with the shell velocity penetration, just mean that this feels like it's the best auto-reloading tank, and that's why I prefer this tank over the other vehicles, as well as the pretty cool skin which you're going to see in the gameplay. So we're now going to skip on into the first of the two gameplays, and I'll talk you through my thinking on my gameplay. So we are into the first of two gameplays in today's video, and we are here on Redshire in a standard battle in the Progetto 65, and this is a great map for a vehicle like this. We are able to utilize our mobility and our view range, which we have buffed up with our equipment and commander setup, and hopefully get a good bit of assistance early doors, some nice spotting assistance, and you'll find that you do get a nice lot of assistance in this vehicle if you set it up similarly than I have, as I showed you at the start of today's video. And it does allow you to kind of be useful whilst you are trying to play with this horrific DPM that this vehicle has. As you can see, it does take a long time for you to load all four of your shells. Horrific DPM, but it just feels so much more efficient, so much more reliable than the other auto reloaders, and that usually results in better games. It does suit itself to longer games that are more drawn out, that are very close because of that poor DPM, but you still can make yourself useful whilst you are reloading. You can pop up, try and use your view range, try and get into a better ambush opportunity to utilize the auto loading capacity of this vehicle, and that's what I like to try and do in any auto reloader, but especially this one. I try and look at playing autoloaders a little bit like a challenge. So there are better tier 10 medium tanks out there, there are better tier 9 medium tanks out there to play than any of the autoloaders in the game, in my opinion. But once you have played so many thousands battles of games, or you get a bit bored of certain vehicles, you can play tanks like this to try and test your skills. And when you get a good game in a vehicle like this, you know that you have played a good game, you've chosen the right positions, you've chosen the right targets to interact with and engage with, and yeah, it feels a lot better than having a good game in a tank which is just downright a lot better. It's not going to be for everyone, I completely agree, but in my opinion this is the best auto-reloader, and it's probably the most fun out of the whole bunch. So we've only got 460, make that 700, 852 assistance, as it kept going up as I was speaking, and 384 damage. It's a slow start, but it has allowed us to get a kind of overview of the battlefield and where the enemies are going. There is this Progetto 46 who we managed to snipe there into the top of his turret. That's the great thing about this gun. It feels extremely accurate, extremely reliable, and we managed to get another shell there into that Object 416. Unfortunately, we bounced off his turret there, and I didn't really need to fire that third shell, and for the start of this battle I was just trying to fire either the fourth shell that gets loaded into the magazine or the third shell and keep 2 in the tank to try not to reduce my DPM to a really poor level. But we did fire there, and you can see that it really does completely screw you for the rest of the game. I fired that shell there on that T-54 lightweight because I felt like I wanted to get that light tank out of the game, and I didn't want to put my faith in the other tanks near me to take him out. I wanted to make sure I got that light tank out of the game, especially on a large open map. It could come in handy later. Lone Wolf in his Terran, who's a good friend of mine, manages to take out that Object 416, so hopefully we can play in conjunction here. We're not in a platoon, but we can play like a platoon, and I can hopefully get some vision out down the one line for him, or maybe on this sort of central ridge line. We haven't taken any damage so far, which is a good standing for the rest of the battle. We spot this artillery little piggy trying to run away, and unfortunately all of the ridge lines and undulations are making it very awkward for us to get a shell. So we make sure we're going to be lining up for when he next gets spotted. Unfortunately, he went behind a building, looked like he went unspotted just for a second. We missed a shell, we missed a second shell and just tracked him, and that meant that we only had 2 shells left. I put 2 into him anyway because we're going to have to fall back and reload, and Lone Wolf in the Terran takes out the Batchat 155-55, and now we have this horrendous long reload to get all of our shells back into the tank. But when you're playing Autoreloader, don't make yourself completely useless when you are reloading. You don't want to sit behind hard cover and do nothing. If you have to avoid taking fire, of course, but if you have the opportunity to try and get a bit of vision out, then definitely try and do that. Poke some ridge lines, or make sure you get into position so that when you next get into an engagement, you are ready with your shells, you're ready in the right position, and you've chosen your next target. So right now we're just waiting to get the maximum possible DPM we can, and then we can start engaging targets again. Unfortunately there, the gun dirt, which is very unusual for the 105mm gun on this vehicle, and we hit the ridgeline and don't put a shot into that Borsig. We wait for our reload again, trying to just show a little bit of patience. We take out the T-30, a very dangerous tier 9 American tank destroyer, and now we are detected, so we're trying to avoid taking fire from anything that might be in the back. We're going to poke up on this ridgeline, see if we can get any shots into this heavy tank. We have the full quota of hit points, and it's 5 versus 5, so that puts us in a good standing at the moment. However, I'm going to make a bit of a misplay here. I should have just fallen back a ridgeline and attempted to engage this Batchat from a different position, because although we do manage to get 2 shells here and nearly a third one into the Batchat, we take a massive slap from the side there. Either a Centurion AVRE or I think it's a Death Star at the back there has absolutely slapped us, and that is going to be catastrophic for the rest of this game, because we are a one-shot to a couple of tanks in this game now, and we don't have as many hit points to be able to take this one down. We get spotted. I'm assuming it's from the Borsig, who is in front of me with superior camo rating, and now we're just trying to wait until we get unspotted again, and then we can try and get a bit of vision out for our team. Lone Wolf takes out the Borsig, which is great news for us. However, I get spotted again in the open, so I'm going to use this hard cover here to avoid taking fire from a tank or a tank destroyer who is situated in sort of E9, E0 I should say, and then hopefully we can get undetected again, fall back a ridgeline and see if we can not try and engage this batch at 25T from a different location. And it really is all about trying to pick the right target to engage with, trying to push with your teammates, making sure you have hard cover or you have support around you so you're able to reload, and you want to make yourself useful in between your reloads. And that's how I play all of my auto-reloaders, and it just seems to be whenever I play this tank I get a good game. Regardless of a victory or a defeat, I seem to manage to have decent results in this tank, and I really enjoy playing it. It can get frustrating with the DPM, and like I say, there are better and just downright better tanks at tier 9 and tier 10 that you can choose to play if you want to be the most competitive, but it can be quite fun, and having that auto-loading capacity to this tank can come in clutch in certain scenarios, especially when you are in a sort of 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3. You can take out your opponents very quickly in quick succession. So we come over here to try and assist this tank destroyer with the Batchat in the corner, but it's going to be very hard to dig out a Batchat. That tank has fantastic concealment and is going to be able to outspot me every single time unless they have an absolutely horrific commander. So we're going to try and fall back behind this dead wreck and just have to wait in this position for the enemies to come to us. It's 4 versus 4. It's a very long, drawn-out game, which is what you want to have in your auto-reloaders. You want to have long games which allow you to use the horrific DPM. And now I'm going to try and make a break for it over the open field. Going to come the opposite side of this ridgeline and see if we cannot surprise this Batchat or anyone else who is situated in either the hill to my left right behind me or the hill straight in front of me towards this heavy tank brawling location. We've picked up 3 kills, 2.4k direct damage and 1000 assistance. We spot this Death Star on top of the ridgeline. We're using the great hold traverse and mobility there to get in behind some destructible cover as we are advancing on this Death Star. And now we're going to get undetected and see if we cannot surprise the Death Star coming from a different location. We have an advantage over that tank destroyer as we actually have a fully rotational turret. We have the better concealment, and we do have this auto-reloading gun, which we are able to take out the Death Star in a magazine. We do stop there to make sure we take out the Centurion AVRE, and now we're going to come over here and try and ambush this Death Star, take him out of the game, and then we can try and assist a very low health T-44. So it's not looking great for us at this moment. Our tank destroyer is getting rushed by the Batchat. We're going to try and see if we can get any kind of rounds in here on the Batchat. Unfortunately, we do miss one there, so we're going to drop down this hill, advance at this Death Star. Hopefully the Death Star is up on the hill looking at the centre of the map, and we can get either 3 or 4 rounds in to take out this Death Star. So we get one in, and now as we're coming over this ridgeline, we're going to make sure we track this Death Star in place. He can't depress the gun enough, and we can use our 3rd shell there to take him out. And that's the beauty of having an auto-reloader sometimes, is that you do have those extra shells. We're going to juke like we're going back towards the north of this map, and we're going to return to the south to help out our remaining T-44. It's going to be a very tricky one to take down at this particular point, as our friend here in the tier 8 vehicle is a one-shot, and we are either a one-shot or a magazine away from death from the Batchat or the other remaining medium tank, or the heavy tank I should say. So we're going to come down here, down to the K-line, as we know the Batchat is straight in front of us. And in this kind of scenario, when especially the enemy 2 tanks are in a platoon, we're going to try and take out whatever tank we spot first as quickly as possible, so we're able to relocate and not get sort of pincered into one position by 2 tanks. So I'm trying to be as gentle as possible while poking over this ridgeline. I'm going to have to take this opportunity to get a couple of rounds here into the Andre the Giant, fall back and try and reload a couple of shells into my magazine, so we have the full quota of 4 shells. Unfortunately for us, we're in a position now where we can't really escape. I've kind of backed myself into a corner. Didn't really want to do so, however we've duped to go around the opposite way, and now we're managing to flick round. The back check tries to fire on the move. We have the superior intricate reload and the superior reaction speed there. Fortunately for us, the back chat missed one and dipped one into the ground, and now we're just trying to juke the Andre the Giant as if we're going over the top of these buildings. We're going to try and build up some momentum, come in with a full magazine and just try and circle this heavy tank. Unfortunately for us, we get him in the wrong location, but he bounces off our upper hull, which is that extra 10mm over the PC counterpart. And we're not firing now because we want to keep as much DPM in this tank as possible. What I should have done in this scenario was continuously fired the first shell, first shell, first shell. Because we fall 400 damage short, I didn't do my calculations correctly, and it would have been much better for me to try and track, get round, and reload the fourth shell and track again and repeat. But we still have a pretty decent result there in a very long game, in a decent defeat. We managed to finish that game with 6.6k direct damage, 1000 assistance, high caliber and a sniper medal, and a mastery badge in a defeat with 1069 assistance, and Lone Wolf doing a decent job there in the Turan. We pick up a profit with or without a premium account, and we block 560 alpha damage from the Andre the Giant off the upper hull, and also get that top gun with the 6 kills. So that's it for the first gameplay. We're now going to head on into the second one. So we are now into the second gameplay of today's video, and we are here in the Progetto 65 in a standard battle, and we are on Sand River, which is one of my favourite maps, and it does allow us some nice opportunity at the start of the battle to use the great mobility of this vehicle and get here into G6, G5, spot out towards the enemy base and at all of the tanks that are situated in these sniping positions and trying to get safe. We're now going to dump our magazine into the rears of those tanks, as I feel like I wasn't going to be able to get any more shots for the moment. And now we're going to sit behind this hard cover in front of us if we get detected, but we're going to stay on this ridgeline and try and keep our vision up on those sniping positions. We are aware that there's a Jagdpanzer now below us, so after he is fired, it looks like we're going to have to make our way out of this position. Unfortunately, we get tracked as we're making our way out of that position, and fortunately we don't take any further damage. All of these heavy tanks are way too slow to get into position down here in this little ravine, so we're going to make our way to a different position. And whilst we're doing so, the great thing about the autoreloaders is that you are obviously loading whilst you are on the move. You don't have to actively do anything about it, so when you're going from one position to another, when you get there you will likely have at least one more shell, hopefully a whole more magazine for your next engagement. But we get spotted by this chieftain who is coming very cheekily to get shots at our heavy tanks. We've stayed in this position and we're just going to try and unload into this chieftain. We track him in place there and we keep our final shell, thinking that we're going to try and get some extra DPM and keep at least a little bit of our DPM, but we put our final one into him, and hopefully now he's a one-shot, someone can take him out. A very dangerous tier 10 British heavy tank, and the Type 5 heavy manages to oblige. So as we are now dry and our DPM is the worst it can be, we're going to make our way over here towards the north and see if we can assist with these heavy, medium tanks and light tanks at clearing out this section. And it also gives me a nice overview of our base should we be sort of surrounded, and we can defend our base from this position. It allows me to get some nice vision off at tanks if we do lose that little battle in the middle of Sand River in that little ravine. We got one more shell to load until we get optimum DPM, so we're going to wait for as long as possible to get a shell here on this object 772. Tried to track him in place, which can't remember if we did it there. I've got an extremely short memory as it appears. However, that Emil 2 appeared, and with that kind of turret armor and that gun, we definitely don't want to take 4 shells into the rear, so we're going to have to be very careful about this vehicle. But it looks like he's dumped quite a few of his rounds. He's running away. We get one into him. We're now going to try and go for the tracks. Miss, but we do penetrate into the rear, and now it's just a one shot for us, and we're going to take full advantage of that situation to get another tank out of the game. And That's when you want to be firing that fourth shell, is if you feel like it's going to either save your life in an engagement, completely cripple a very dangerous tank, or if you're going to be able to secure a kill. And that's another thing that auto-reloaders are very good at. Although they have that horrific DPM and they aren't extremely good at much, they are very good for picking up kills, as you have the ability to play like an autoloader and like a single fire gun, albeit with that poor DPM. So now we're going to make our way over, see if we can help our heavy tank up in that A7 location. I'm a bit wary of any tanks to my left here as we come, so that's why I'm coming in with momentum. We're going to make sure we fire into the rear of this 772 and try and take him out. Unfortunately for us, we bounce our second shell, but he gets taken out by the E5 thanks to our distraction. The artillery misses us. We are being detected, so we're just going to drop back a ridgeline, make sure we keep our DPM by reloading some more shells and making sure we are full with our magazine, and then we can advance over these dunes and try and get some vision out towards the enemy's base, and hopefully we can take out their enemy artillery, who is only down in that corner as we saw the shell come flying over at us. So we picked up 4.8k direct damage and 638 assistance. We spot the Trailblazer sneakily making its way across the open, and now we're going to have to test our aiming skills. We miss our first shell there. We get our second shell. Fortunately, it looked like we tracked him, but he repaired very quickly, and now we're going to see if we can get a couple of shells now to finish him off. We've got one shell left in the magazine. We fire it blind and we miss. You can see there though that the shell velocity is very nice at those distances. You don't have to give a crazy amount of lead, and if you're a better shot than me, you would have been able to take out that light tank no problem. Now we're going to advance with our mobility, use the already fantastic view range that we have, and we're picking up some assistance on this Death Star. We're going to try and pop up from this side, and if he's looking at us, our teammate should be able to take him out, and if he's not looking at us, we should be able to get some shells into him. So we spot him up. I'm not in that kind of game of poking a Death Star. We just have to see how chancy I feel at the moment. They're coming after me, so I'm just going to bait them down this ridge line, and when they come over this ridge, we can do to the Death Star what we did in the last game and hopefully track him in place. Hasn't got a fully traversable turret. He fires at someone else on the move, meaning that we were safe anyway. So we get one into him, and now we can come over. We're going to wait for our fourth shell to reload, so we have 4 shells, and we can now put him into the Panther 2. We track him in with 1 shell, put a 3rd shell into him, and yeah, he's now going to be left on 5 hit points, and we get the tracking assistance as well for that E5. And now it's just the remaining light tank left. We have also bounce 520, showing you that upper hull and the sort of angled turret can bounce occasionally. Definitely not reliable, but that upper plate being 10mm more than the PC version can definitely come in clutch, and the E4 finishes off the last remaining tank in this battle, which is the Trailblazer on the enemy team, meaning we finally get a victory in the Progetto 65. We finish in the MVP slot with a profit with or without a premium account. That one's only a first class with a high caliber and Confederate medal, 1531 base experience points, 1 kill, 6.9k direct damage, 1232 assistance, and 520 blocked. So this video explains why I think this is the best auto-reloading tank. It's definitely not the most competitive, but I think it's fairly fun for an auto-reloader, and I quite like it. Let me know what you think of the Italian auto-reloaders in the comments below. I think I know what that's going to be. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for your support, and until next time, I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.